Yes, lads. Merry fucking Christmas. As you can see, I've got my hat on. But it's a little bit of a Christmas special. What I'd give to you on Christmas Eve, you know. Hope everyone's Christmas is going well at the time of this recording. But obviously today we're gonna go over, what actually helped me to become a better closer. Closer consistently. So, a bit of free value as we go into Christmas, into the new year, so we can improve your skill set. And before we obviously start, we always like to clear up that it wasn't just better scripts, right? We don't use scripts around here. And this is why, most closers skip this part. Now, through over 300 plus calls in literally a small period of 4 months, the amount of volume that I basically took on allowed me to get my repetitions in. And ultimately, trial and error, different things. Now, it helped me understand the psychology behind people, their decisions, objections, you know how they make decisions, what actually is fear, what's uncertainty, how to reframe these ideas. And it allowed me to achieve, well, the 63% close rate in 190 plus calls for one of my offers, right? And it was understanding what was actually happening in the decision moment. So 63% close rate may seem a bit low to you, but due to the sheer volume of calls on one of the offers, it's a very high for the amount of volume. And this was in about a month and a half. Um, I took literally, I think it was 184 calls, plus a few more, which tipped over to like 192. So it allowed me to trial and error different things, is what I'm trying to get at. The common mistake most closers make is they think, you know, the issue is objections, price, hesitation, fear, uncertainty. And that's what most closers focus on. And that is the wrong problem, right? Because those are symptoms. And I had a call yesterday and I was going into basically the price, him not having enough money. But I said to him, well, isn't that the point? He said, what? Well, isn't that the point why I was on this call? Because the whole point is you're dealing with these symptoms, right? That you don't have enough money to invest into yourself to learn a skill set, right? You don't have, you have uncertainty. And I was just like, well, that's a symptom to your actual real problem. What is the problem? Well, he's too uncertain, he's too fearful to step into anything, to learn a skill set for him never have to worry about money again. So it's actually the skill set that was a problem, the real cause behind him not having enough money. So all of these are symptoms, right? They're not causes. And what I realized on calls, people weren't resisting the offer. Most people, what personally do you like about, or what we offer, or what do you think personally can get you to XYZ about what we offer? Most people like that, right? They think the offer is good for them. And that's why they weren't resisting the offer. They were resisting the identity change, the decision required. Because to make a decision, especially when they get price shock, when they have to make a decision, they need a new level of responsibility. They need a new standard for themselves. They need to hold themselves up to that standard. And they need a new version of who I am, essentially. Because this person that's in the future would make the decision. But for the last 2 years, their current self hasn't made the decision because they've been, you know, stuck in the same kind of fearful, uncertain trust issues. Kind of that low frequency identity is what I'm trying to get at. And that's why when making this big decision that their future self would make, it's a whole different playing field. Now, this creates kind of a bottleneck, right? I always look at models, financial models, business models, and there's always bottlenecks, and it's how to get over them and how to identify what they actually are in the first place. Now, think of it like a funnel, right? This is how I describe a funnel. So their current identity is at the top of the funnel. They have a lot of space, they're comfortable in their circle. Now, their new identity is like the bottom of the funnel. And think about, you trying to fit your current identity through this funnel, right? Trying to shove yourself down into this essentially this new person at the bottom. Now, as you can see, it's probably a tight squeeze down there. So this causes, hesitation, friction, resistance, objections. It's that whole point. So the whole point about kind of this funnel is that this place down here is the pathway that they need to take. And it can be scary, it can be daunting, but it's the pathway they need to align themselves with and take in order to be this new person so they can make this decision. And obviously, that causes hesitation, as I was talking about. Because what most closers don't do is they don't slow down at the identity moment, right? They don't slow down the pace. As you know, slower pace means empathy and means, they internalize it. Quicker pace means they have, quicker response. You want a quick kind of action out of it. So they don't slow the pace, they don't slow their tonality down. So they don't internalize it, they don't actually understand it. Instead, what they do is they probably keep explaining, right? They add more logic behind why they kind of need to be this new person, all this logical sense. And as you probably already know, we don't really want to probe into their logical certainty. We want to probe directly into their emotional certainty. Obviously, the logical certainty gives contextual understanding of why they haven't made this decision in the past. But what we want to tap into is their emotional certainty because logical certainty, is the decision they make. But emotional certainty is the justification for that decision. So they probably also feel the silence. A lot of beginner closers, they don't focus on actually allowing silence to be there because silence causes psychological pressure. It causes them to be on the spot, them to feel a bit pressurized, a bit discomfort, have discomfort. But that's actually, a great tool to have. And I mentioned that so many times. Silence is key. And they probably try to handle objections, right? And what I mean by that is all of these pushes the prospect back into safety. Now, what actually helped me, and this is the value I want you to get from this, is I started closing the identity gap first, right? Before asking for commitment, I made sure the decision felt congruent with who they wanted to be. So before me, saying, well, I believe in you can do this, like, do you actually believe you can do this? So what, moving forward is the next step. You know, do you think it is be person A or person B? And before I did all that commitment, all of that shenanigans before the pitch, I just wanted to make sure, out of a genuine conversation, that they felt comfortable with their new identity, with who they actually align themselves with, and if they wanted to actually be that person. Because their current self is probably hesitant, they're cautious, they're always waiting around, procrastinating. And then, well, next self, their future self is decisive. They're self trusting. They believe in themselves. They can do it. They are committed. They believe that they can invest in themselves and actually carry it through. And this is such a paradoxical kind of equation to who they were or who they are now. And it's like getting on a call in 40 minutes. It can be quite daunting that this new person that has to make this decision, and they would be. So this gap creates objections, between this and this. And this goes back to essentially the funnel, who they are now and who they want to be. And this is hesitation, resistance, pushing it back, and well, ultimately objections. Now, what I changed on calls. Now, small shifts that change everything. It's always the small things that add up to the bigger picture, right? Instead of trying to change a script, instead of just trying to change your whole kind of personality on the call, I'm more of a laid back, chilled closer. I know other people that are more aggressive, more kind of upfront, but it's whatever suits your kind of personality. So for me, I slowed my pace a lot down, massively. When I was starting out to close, when I slowed down my pace, I saw so much more benefit because they were actually internalizing what I'm saying and actually understanding, you know, what I'm trying to say. And with that, when you slow it down, the words are more powerful. It punches more. And this is why it gives them more empathy. You feel more understanding. So it also, with that, builds more trust. It builds more kind of, that connection between you two, more comfortability between you two. And again, for me personally, I lowered my tonality. So I wasn't hyperactive. I wasn't shouting, screaming. I wasn't shouting in their face. I was just very calm. I was very relaxed. And I feel like with me, if you were to speak to a lot of the prospects that had calls with me, they felt I was very authentic, very, very relaxed. They felt comfortable as soon as they got on the call. because I approach it in a way that, well, I'm like speaking to my best mate. Like I wouldn't shout my best mate. All right, I might do now and then, but in a normal conversation, like I'm talking to you now, I'll just speak to you like that. Whereas some people feel like they need to pressure them or like be this. They feel like they need to get authority through their body language and their tonality. Whereas authority plainly can come from pointing them out on their shit. So making them not get away with saying like if, well, I think I can, or them just giving you shit answers like, you know, if you're trying to find out what's held them back in the past and they just keep giving you as many objections. Externalization, sorry, like if they say it's a scam, comfortable, didn't know where the guidance, I was getting distracted on my work. If they keep going round and round and round, point them out on the shit. That's when the authority comes in. It's not through shouting and screaming at them. People will just, get annoyed or trying to create more resistance, basically. And let silence do the work. As I literally said, 2 minutes ago, silence is beautiful, right? Silence for me is everything. Because as soon as you ask a question and it gets silence and they're up there thinking, they're looking up because they're thinking, they're looking around, their whole body language changed. They might put their hand up. That's all that kind of psychological pressure that they're feeling right now and that kind of discomfort. And as I said, that's a great thing because it puts them on the spot. It's making them take ownership. And once they're thinking, they're actually subconsciously internalizing everything you've just asked, everything you're saying. Loads of things are going around in their head. And instead of basically, trying to have time to externalize it straight away, quick response, when they think and they have that silence, they pause. The most likelihood is they're truthful with you. And that's what I found, right? Because of the psychological pressure, because of the discomfort, they feel like they have to be truthful with you. So for me, silence does all the work in my calls. I don't feel like I need to like fill it. If I ask a question and it goes silent, I just sit there. If they go on a rant, I sit there. I don't need to speak over them. I don't. And I'd be like, "Are you done? Or what was that for?" So silence is a great tool, and that's one thing I wanted you to take away. And I also reflected their identity and not logic. So what I mean by that is when we basically go through identity shift or when we're, kind of shifting that consequences future pace, what I'm doing is I'm not filling it with, logic, why they have to become this new person, right? I'm not trying to sit there and trying to add facts and reasons and trying to like blurt out and like fill the silence and just try to speak, in their ear on why they should become this person because of this, and if they don't, they do this and this. All I do is one, I put binary personas on them, so A or B, reflecting their current identity and their future identity, and I make them reflect themselves. I make them tell me, what better personas to be, what person they want to be, A or B. I make them tell me why they want to do it, what emotions are doing it, and I make them reflect on their own, current identity. Where has it got them? Where has it, progressed them to? If they had faced it, where could they be? So instead of trying to like logically rant along, and this goes to objection handling as well. When it comes to like mini future pace and mini consequence, mini discovery again, with whatever they're giving you, stop trying to just blurt loads of words at them. It don't work out, right? Because if they're listening to you, it's just going in one ear and going out the other. They don't care about you. You need to make them understand it. You need to make them reflect the identity they want to be instead of you just trying to logically put them in that place, trying to make them agree with you, right? So make them reflect the kind of decisions, the actions, the behaviors, the language of this new identity instead of just you shouting words at them. So these small changes, as I was saying, was helped along with how I frame decisions now. Because I always go along with this binary identity. I stopped framing decisions as offers, right? I framed them as identity choices. So instead of me saying, well, you're investing £1,000 today. Imagine you could get this and this. It offers you and then this. Instead of just, I say you're investing yourself. And the investment is the essentially the transition between who you are now and who you want to be. Because what does that essentially that person, that future self, the desired outcome, what decision does he make today on a call based on these perspectives X, Y, Z that he obtains? Well, he does this. So the investment isn't the matter of fact where you're here because of you want to invest in the offer, because we offer this, because you do that. It's simply the investment to transition into your future self. And a lot more people go, wow, yeah, like that makes sense. Because how they think about them is when they internalize it, they think that the investment, the money isn't a problem now because the investment is literally like the cost to put themselves in alignment with what they want to do with their future self because they understand their future self will make the decision on the call. So it's more of a hurdle now instead of a massive, great fucking wall. Because when you pitch it in a way that they're investing just into the offer, they're putting 4K down just for the coaching, just for this. People don't buy because of the offers, they buy who they want to be. So put that same kind of progression into who they want to be. Just frame it in a way that the investment is for the identity that they want to be instead of just an offer. Because we've gone through it so many times how people don't just buy into offers. They don't buy because of the product. They buy who you are, where you stand, their identity, who they want to be, what their kind of future self would do, all of these things. So again, binary frames, person A, they delay, they wait, stays familiar, comfort zone, same old, same old. Person B decides, they commit, they adjust to scenarios. When I say adjust, that comes back to being resourceful, finding an abundance, out of, there is an abundance of money out there. Instead of looking at it as scarcity, reframe the idea how there is an abundance of money. And you can go find money if you truly, want it. So every decision reinforces one of those. Self-categorization without pressure, right? And it comes back to reflecting identity. I make them categorize themselves, person A or person B. I don't put no pressure. They walk through the door themselves. I just put the doors there. And each door they walk through is a subconscious psychological decision. If they walk through enough doors and pick the right things and then, basically tie down on why they did it, the close will come easily. So, why does any of this matter? Because this is why objections stopped dominating my calls. That's the simple truth. Not because people changed, but because the whole frame of my call did. And most closers never learn this part, right? They carry on with scripts. They carry on with, maybe some training modules. But realistically, what you need to understand is truly the psychological behaviors behind people. And once you understand that, you can dominate any call you want. With the correct tonality, the pace, when it gets to objection handling, simple reframes, simple logical reframes. It may seem that, but even there are, all these pretty ones out on the internet. But the whole point is authority comes through you pointing them out. The actual investment of what they're buying into isn't about the offer. Okay, it might be part of it, right? Obviously, they're not going to buy into nothingness, but that's just a vehicle to their success. What they buy into is who they want to be. And then the offer is just a vehicle they will get there. But however, that decision and price shock can be quite daunting. Because if you just pitch in a way that they're investing into the offer, investing into the offer because of this and this is what you get, training modules, this and this and this, it's not good enough. Because they human psychology is they invest into a person that's down the line, right? Because let me put it in simple terms. When you go to, I don't know, Zara, right? Or you go to Gucci, Louis Vuitton, you don't buy the t-shirt. All right, you might buy the t-shirt because it's nice. Again, the offer might be all right. But it's the vehicle to you feeling good, looking good. You buy it because you're like, oh, I could wear this to the club, or I could wear this out with my family, or my girlfriend's going to love this. Your identity gets stronger, you get more confident, right? Same thing with an offer. They buy it not because they want to buy the offer for the sake of it, but they buy it because it's going to get them to better. It's they're going to get them to their better future self. You know, the more confident, the more structured, the more disciplined, more consistent. The guy that's earning 10k, that's who they want to buy into. So when it comes to framing your calls going forward, try to actually go away, go away, look at some psychology, right? 100%. There's some sick names out there. And next call, try to trial and error your frames. Instead of just going by a script, put the script down. But as I said, this was my best tips, right? From when I literally took, you know, many of calls. I think, back in August, I did like 11 hours a day, 11 calls straight, like for pretty much a whole month. So if you can imagine, I didn't just stick to script. I didn't just do the same thing. If I didn't close, I'd watch it back, go to do the next thing, trial and error, do different frames. I've done it all. I've tried it all. I've done it all. The best thing that worked for me is just a genuine conversation with your prospect, understanding who they are, what's actually holding them back, and what the correct kind of way to go about it to get them aligned with their future self. And trust me, it's not logically trying to explain to them that it's the best decision. It's them understanding, them telling you, because they 100% believe what they say. So that's it for obviously for today. Merry Christmas. As you can see, my hat is on. I hope you all get what you want. So take this free value away. Go into the new year, smash it. And if you need anything, drop me a text. And I want to see you guys killing it. So I will see you later.